All right, let's rock and roll. How is everybody doing? I'll ask you again. How's everybody doing? Good. One more time. How's everybody doing? Killing me. All right, so we got the CodeMash stuff out of the way. A little bit of housewarming. If you have any questions, come see me at the booth or just talk to me in the hallway track because that's where the community's built, and I'll get into community in a little bit. How many front-end devs are in this room? Designers? Back-end developers? Product owners? VPs? Directors? QA? BA? Who has their hand in a piece of the pie that we call web and software? Every hand should be up, right? Unless you just came off the street and walked through this shit. So CodeMash is out of the way. Huge shout out to CodeMash. I am a CodeMash veteran. I have been coming to CodeMash for over a decade. I've been here in various capacities as an attendee, a volunteer, a speaker, a sponsor. I've been on the speaker selection committee and have brought speakers in all over the world. Huge shout out that we're able to do this for another year in a row, 20-year anniversary. Super, super stoked to be here. If you get a chance, please thank your sponsors. We got sponsors up and down the hallway. If you're gonna talk to them, that's awesome. They would really appreciate it. If you're gonna grab some swag, grab some functional swag, but make sure you come to our booth, grab all the swag. Like I said, we got some really dope shirts, we got pins, stickers. We got a really good raffle that we're doing. We're doing a Catan raffle tomorrow at the booth at 1 o'clock. So make sure you come by, get a ticket, and then we're gonna do a NASA Lego set closing remarks tomorrow at the end of the day. So make sure you come and see us, but make sure that you give your sponsors some knuckles, a handshake, something. If it wasn't for sponsors, we wouldn't have these events, we wouldn't have community. And these events are near and dear to my heart. So that would be awesome for me. This is the official hashtag for the event, CodeMash. Is everybody still on Twitter? It'll always be Twitter, by the way. It'll always be Twitter. It will never be X. LinkedIn, everybody I'm assuming. Blue Sky? Yeah, a little bit. So hashtag CodeMash is the official hashtag for the event. If you could use that when you're tweeting, posting anywhere, that would be really, really amazing. We have show notes for this talk. It's this QR code, so all the resources for this, the slides are up. And once this video is posted, you'll be able to get access to that. You can also enter to win a prize through our show notes, which is really, really cool. So you can sign up to win a prize or just be notified when the video drops. I'll also have this available at the end of the slide deck as well. Like I said, all the resources for this, the slide deck, and then once the video is out, probably sometime next week when I get back home, which is only 2.5 hours away, I'll have it edited and we'll be good to go. This is another hashtag that I would love for you to put on anything that you're putting out there. It's hashtag developer community. My role is to build developer community both internally and externally, along with a bunch of other things. Developer community is my lifeblood. I live out of airports that travel all over the world. I live out of airports, I live out of suitcases and hotels for you. I love to be here with my community. It's a safe space, we're gonna have fun, might crack some jokes. You might see me get vulnerable. I don't do accessibility talks anymore. I stopped doing them. But I am doing this one today, and this is probably gonna be the last time you ever see me do an accessibility talk. And there's reasons for that. But, you know, we went through a really, really hard time during COVID, and we're still going through a hard time, unfortunately as it is. And I feel like we almost lost developer community. I don't know about you, but talking into a camera without seeing my audience is kind of a bummer. I need to know that you're picking up what I'm putting down. I need to see you laugh. I need to see your jaw drop. I need to see the light bulbs go off, right? I need to sit down next to you and start BSing with you. I need that. And we almost lost it. But luckily, because of sponsors and community, because you all made it here, it's coming back. And it's slowly coming back, but it's coming back nonetheless. So if you could throw hashtag developer community on anything you're putting out there, that would be awesome. And also, since this is an accessibility talk, if you're taking pictures, make sure you please add alt text to anything that you post on socials. It would benefit the community tremendously. I'm gonna play this video, and it's from Apple. I'm not sponsored by Apple, I don't get paid by Apple, I'm not endorsed by Apple, but I wanna play it for you and I wanna get your take on it. Everybody hear that?
People think that having a disability is a barrier. But that's not the way I see it. You can catch up with friends. You can capture a moment with your family. One fix, small fix, focus lock. And you can start the day bright and early. You can take a trip to somewhere new. You can concentrate on every word of the story. A bird began to sing. Jack opened his eyes. You can take the long way home. Or edit a film like this one. When technology is designed for everyone, it lets anyone do what they love, including me.
That's an extremely powerful video, and it's an older video, but it's extremely powerful. So I want to get your take on this. Why would I show that video? Why is that video important? And anybody can shout it out. I love to hear everybody's answers. Why is that video so important?
Because accessibility is important.
What else? What else?
Taking into account all the needs of your users.
What else?
Shows how people with disabilities need different ways to interact with technology.
What else? A lot of people are usually stumped when I ask them this. Representation. There's three things that always get put on the back burner when we're building web and software technology. Performance, security, and accessibility. Always. Until shit hits the fan. Then we start to worry about it. We should have been caring about it from the beginning. The big reason I show this video, and I love all those answers, and there's not a wrong answer. It shows that the world is bigger than we are, right? How many of you in here right now know that you are using assistive technology? If I said you're using assistive technology, what would you say? Yeah? I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people in here, 8 that are using assistive technology right now. Maybe 9. Your glasses. Technology does not just have to be digital, right? You're using your glasses because you need to be able to see. Or if you have contacts, you might have contacts, I don't know. We can build and ship stuff all day that we think is cool, or a marketing team thinks is cool, or a branding team, or a design team. But at the end of the day, if we're the only ones that thinks it's cool, it's not benefiting anybody. So we really need to be cognizant of the world outside of the 4 walls that we're in, or the 2-week JIRA sprints, right? Or a paycheck. Like if you're in it for the money, that's great. But we are ambassadors to the world. We're changing lives. And we don't always think about that. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So why do I care so much about accessibility? That's a great question. I get this question all the time. Why do you care? First half of this talk, we're going to talk about accessibility and the whys and the reasoning, and then we're going to hop into the tech stuff. So hopefully it's not boring. There's an exit right there, though, if you want to leave. I will not be hurt. This exit here, too, but then you got to walk past me, and that might not be a good idea. Just kidding. Just kidding. My mom is a boomer. She is going to turn 70 in May. I have to talk really loud for her to hear me, even if I'm 20 feet from her. So she's starting to lose her hearing. My mom wears glasses. She has macular degeneration in her eye. She's taking medication to kind of pause that progression. But if you're familiar with any type of degeneration, it just happens, right? So she has visual impairment. I could have talked to her an hour ago and said, hey, I got to give this talk at 9:45. She could have called me 5 minutes ago and said, hey, what are you doing? Where are you at? Would have no clue that that's what I told her. But she could remember something from 1977 like that, who she was with, where she was at. So she has a little bit of a cognitive disability going on. Luckily, she doesn't have anything that's temporary impairment, so like a broken hand, broken arm, broken finger, right? But she has mobility disabilities. She has really bad arthritis, really bad nerve pain, her body hurts. I mean, she's getting older, right? So she has 4 out of the 5 current types of impairments or disabilities that we're trying to be cognizant of when we're building web and software. If I can build a web experience for her at the end of the day, and mind you, she doesn't even know how to use a computer, she still has a flip phone, I've done my job as a worker on the web, right? So if you didn't know what your why was, and it could be you in 5 years, I want you to go back after this talk and reflect a little bit, and maybe that light bulb will go off and you'll figure out what your why is. That's me. My name is Chris DeMars, born and raised in Metro Detroit. You can catch me on Twitter at Sultan Burnham. I'm a senior developer advocate at TuxCare. Has anybody heard of TuxCare? You'll know TuxCare is by the end of the week. So one of the big products that we put out there is endless lifecycle support for end-of-life solutions. So if you are running any older solutions, Linux, JavaScript frameworks, libraries, .NET, Python, that are all end-of-life, meaning they're no longer patched or supported by community or vendor, we patch those CVEs for you, those dependencies. You pull in our dependencies, we keep you patched for the life that you're working with us. And we patch transitive dependencies out of the box for free. So if you want to know more about that, come see us at the booth. So a little bit about me, international speaker. I love horror and I love tattoos, if you couldn't tell. I'm also a big believer in cryptids, UFOs, and ghosts. Anybody believe in cryptids, UFOs, and ghosts? Come on, you nerds, put your hands up. You guys are killing me, man. Are we really at CodeMash? Or like, what are we doing here? Anybody believe in Bigfoot? Anybody have a favorite cryptid? No, oh my God. Mothman is the best, the only cryptid that matters. That's right, that's my favorite. Anybody believe in UFOs? Holy ghosts? Okay, good. Thank you. The talk is called Building Accessible Components with Razor. I haven't done this talk in a long time, so if it sucks, just give me good feedback anyways, please. I wouldn't be able to do this talk without a couple people, David Pine and Scott Addy and Ed Charbonneau. Amazing .NET C# developers. I'm a front-end developer, I'm not a back-end developer, senior developer advocate, but been a front-end developer for 30 years. And the way this talk came about was I was helping a back-end developer learn how to build accessibility into .NET. And really the way you do that is using Razor, and from what I was told, Razor hasn't changed pretty much at all. So it can kind of still work across the board. But David Pine, Scott Addy, Ed Charbonneau, all of these guys have written books on .NET C# stuff. Ed does a lot of stuff in the Blazor world, so does Dave. So if you ever get a chance to meet these guys or follow them, please do. Question time. If I had asked you how many people around the world have some type of disability or impairment, what would that number look like? 80, 90 people? 70%? What else? 100%? How about everyone? It makes sense to me. I got this one time at a conference and had a conversation around it. When we think about disabilities and impairments, we can't just think of the physical, right? Mental health is huge in this community, and it needs to be normalized. I suffer from debilitating health anxiety and accompanying OCD, but you'd never be able to tell. And I also have ADHD as well. Most of us have something going on, right? There's internal struggle. So a lot of us, I like to say everyone. 1 billion people probably around the world have some type of disability and impairment. If you're looking at like the CDC, WHO information, roughly 20 to 25-ish% if you figure out the math. I don't know if I really like that number though. I would say more to 30 to 40% when you factor in those hidden impairments, right? That's the number I would kind of go with. But no one at our company has a disability. How many of you are building internal applications just for your company? Intranet stuff, right? Portals and employee systems, shit like that, right? Have you ever heard this statement before in your organization? I have, years ago. Nobody has a disability though, Chris. Like what? What does it matter what colors we use? What does it matter if we don't have captions in our videos for some of this internal training? I don't know about you, but I've worked with developers who are colorblind. I've worked with QA that is colorblind. I've worked with developers who are deaf. You have to internalize that 30 to 40, 20, 25%, whatever that number is, whatever you believe that number is, you have to internalize that, right? You're building stuff both internally and possibly externally. People in your organization have some type of disability, but they don't have to come out and tell you that, right? They're protected by law. They're not obligated to tell you. So you got to keep that in mind when you're building internally. I like to say it's bullshit. I kind of call it out. I got in trouble one time at a company for calling stuff out like that by legal. They didn't like that, but you got to internalize that all the time. Anybody heard this term before? A11Y, ALI, ALI, yeah? Do you know what this term is called? Not the makeup, but the actual definition of what this term is called. You'll learn something today. No, nothing? It's called a numeronym. What a numeronym is you take the first letter, you take the last letter, count the letters in between, and you get your numeronym, which is A11Y. Who works in internationalization? Everybody should have their hand up. I-18N. Have you heard that before? I-18N? That's internationalization. Who works in localization? L10N. That's a numeronym. Who works in Kubernetes? Holy. K8S. That's a numeronym for Kubernetes. So when you leave this talk, you could tell everybody like, yo, Damar's told me all about numeronyms, and I'm going to start making up my own numeronyms. So what is accessibility? The better question is this: what is web accessibility? This is from the W3. Web accessibility means that people with disabilities can use the web. I'm not a fan of this definition here because we are in an open web. We're building for an open web, and an open web is an inclusive web, and an inclusive web means a web for all. So I like this one a little bit better. Web accessibility means that everyone can use the web. Everybody, regardless of impairment, should be able to have an amazing, accessible user experience. We are not building out 5 different applications for 5 different types of disabilities. We are building one that everybody can benefit from. Who remembers the days of jQuery? Does anybody remember jQuery Mobile? Does anybody remember mobile websites, m.something.com, right? Okay, so back in the day, we would have m.codemash.org. Then we would have codemash.org, 2 separate things. One is a mobile site, separate experience, one is the website. We don't do that anymore. Everything is progressively enhanced or degraded. It all works across the board. We got to make sure that everybody can use the web with the experiences that we're building. This is from WebAIM. The web is not a barrier to people with disabilities. It is a solution. We're building solutions. We're shipping solutions. And then this one, accessibility is not just a requirement, it's a must. It is something to care about. The last thing that leadership wants in your organization is to be hit with a lawsuit because you cut corners and missed out on the accessibility and baking that in from the beginning. It's not costing anybody any extra money. If you're writing the code, just do it right from the beginning. It's that painless. So I alluded to this earlier, the types of disabilities that are out there. We have hearing disabilities, right? Cognitive hearing loss, conductive hearing loss. We have cognitive disabilities, so math comprehension, reading comprehension, autism, Asperger's. Mobility disabilities, MS, arthritis. Temporary or situational. Broken hand, broken arm, broken finger, broken leg. Is anybody a parent in here? You've had a newborn child, right? I assume. Okay. Have you ever had to hold your child and work at the computer at the same time, not be able to use a mouse and a keyboard? Okay. That is a temporary or a situational impairment. Something we all don't think about. And then we have vision. And the vision impairments go all over the board. Low vision is not poor vision, but those are also vision disabilities. CVDs, color vision deficiencies, so being colorblind, field of vision disabilities, macular degeneration, Stargardt's disease, all of those things. These are the things that we need to keep in mind. All right, let's get into the tech piece. So, Razor and ASP.NET Core. I don't know if this is going to go a full hour. Is everybody cool with that? Maybe we'll do like 45 minutes? Cool? Sweet. Razor and ASP.NET Core. So, what is Razor? So, Razor is a markup syntax for embedding server-based code into web pages. The Razor syntax consists of Razor markup, C#, and HTML. My world has always been in HTML. It's used only in MVC, which is Model View Controller, web apps in ASP.NET. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So with this, we have these things called HTML helpers. So in a nutshell, they make it less painful to write out various syntax, right? Especially form syntax, so we're going to talk about forms. This is from Microsoft, though. Helper methods provide an easy way to render HTML in a view or a quick way to prototype a view in an ASP.NET application. Is anybody building anything in Razor? Or, yeah? Okay. Don't judge me, please. I like to switch it out with painless. I'm not a fan of the term easy, because what's easy for you might not be easy for somebody else, right? This is an accessibility talk. There's varying levels to this stuff for a reason. One thing too is this will always be new territory for me. Anytime you have to jump into the back end, or even if you're a back end developer and you got to jump into the front end, right? And you're not familiar with it, it'll always be something new to learn. It'll always be some new type of territory. And the one thing about that is it sort of feels like this. Like that's scary, jumping into stuff that you're not familiar with all the time, right? Everybody like Jaws? It's a great movie, great movie. We're gonna need a bigger boat. So we are going to not build out like a whole entire application. We're just gonna build out a form, right? It's like name, message, button, stuff like that. Well, I'm not gonna run an audit on it. I'm gonna show you an older version of Lighthouse that was running an audit, and then we'll go from there. So Razor supports C#, right? And it uses the @ symbol to transition from HTML to C#. So that's how you, if you wanna write HTML, you want to transfer that into C#, the .NET world, you use an @ symbol. It evaluates the C# expressions and then it renders in the HTML output. So for instance, this is just an example of a Razor code block. Indicates the @ symbol indicates where you're going to start the Razor, followed up by curly braces, and that these variables, one thing to keep in mind, they're scoped. So you start off with the @ symbol, pass in a variable, quote, we'll call it future depends on what you do today. We render that quote, and then we do it again. So that's the before. We don't have an after, because you're gonna see what the after looks like at the end with the form. So you gotta stick around now, just the way it goes. So let's build something. So this is the fun part. I'm gonna go through some code examples. I'm not gonna do any live coding. We all know how that ends up. The code gods will banish me. I'm gonna run through the structure of a form first, then I'm gonna show the examples of the form built with Razor, how we add in the accessibility, and then show the finished rendered form in HTML. Passes an accessibility Lighthouse audit, and we're good to go. That sound good? Yes? You guys seem super bored. Especially you. Come up here, son. Just kidding, you don't have to sit up front. You're like, nope, I'm not sitting up here. I told you we're gonna have fun in this room. Okay, so this is the plan. we are going to discuss the HTML form structure or syntax, show the form in Razor, add in accessibility, and then we're going to show the rendered form in HTML. I think that's it, right? Nope. And then we're going to run a Lighthouse audit on that. Is anybody using Lighthouse right now? How are you? So if you're not using Lighthouse, how are you conducting audits on your websites? Wave? Wave's good. What about performance audits? Yeah.
I remember that Overdrive that we did, we built like in-house accessibility testing
Okay. That's cool.
using Playwright.
Nice. So if you're not using Lighthouse at all, how are you auditing the experience overall? How are you doing a performance audit if you're not using Lighthouse? How are you identifying bottlenecks in your critical rendering path if you're not using Lighthouse? How are you auditing for SEO if you're not using Lighthouse? Or accessibility. Wave's a good product. Is anybody using DQ's products? Yeah. Yeah. DQ, it's not Dairy Queen. DEQUE. It's a company in Ann Arbor. They also have they have an HQ in Ann Arbor, an HQ down in Virginia. But DQ makes a bunch of accessibility testing tools, and Xcore actually runs underneath. It did. I'm pretty sure it still does. It runs underneath the hood in Lighthouse. You can also install the extension in Edge, Firefox, Chrome, and then you can run accessibility audits on your stuff, with which I suggest you do that. Because at any given time, a headhunter could come along, audit your website, and if you're failing, you could get hit with a lawsuit. I'm not saying it'll happen, but there's always the possibility that you can get hit with a lawsuit. And we don't want that to happen. You want to make sure that you're building accessible experiences. So if you're not using Axe's extension, start using Lighthouse to run your audits. All right, so this is a way to start a form, which I'm sure most of us know. Hopefully everybody's writing HTML5, right? We're not using divs all over the place. Divs have no semantics, there's no accessibility properties and states with divs. Make sure that you're using proper syntax, proper markup. So we got forms. So this is how you start a form, right? You open and close it. Ooh, we can add code here. Cool. We have our labels and our inputs, right? So your label can be tied to your input with a for attribute. That way you can click in it and it can populate that. The div is just being used to put stuff on different lines. I didn't feel like writing a bunch of CSS at the time to separate these things, so. We have our text area, right? So this is where you can put in your message, right? And you can associate that with the name, the form, the for, the ID. You can make your columns and rows, so depending on how big you want your form to be. There's a lot of different verification and validation pieces that you can put in all this stuff to make sure that it's filled out properly, that if you have a phone number, that your input type is telephone, so you can't put anything else in but numbers. Same with email address, etc. And then we have a button. I probably could have put the class of button on the button, but for this one I separated it. Is anybody writing CSS by hand still? Oh, you're all great. Who uses Tailwind? No? Shad? CN? No? Okay. Anybody still using Bootstrap? Really? Oh, well, Foundation? Does anybody remember Foundation? No? Am I dating myself? Anybody start writing code in 1996? Pre-96? Cool. No, I love it. I love it. It's awesome. As long as you got involved and you're here and you're writing code and you're building experiences, that's all that matters. It's great. So the finished product of that little bit of markup looks like this. First name, last name, email, phone number, message, submit. Charlotte is awesome. Charlotte was an old coworker of mine many moons ago, and she was going to attend the talk, and that's why I put it in there. She was pretty awesome. So this is what it looks like, right? We have our inputs and our labels. We have our text area. And then we have our buttons. Now let's run a Lighthouse audit on this experience and see what happens. So Lighthouse is built into Chrome, built into Firefox, built into Edge. You can run Lighthouse in your terminal if you want to. You can run Lighthouse in your testing framework. So if you're using like Cypress or Jest, you're building on the front end, you can run Lighthouse in your GitHub workflow. So you can run these audits. You can put rules with Lighthouse as well. So if, let's say you're running a performance audit and the score is not high enough, right? Or let's say your DOM content loaded, you have a threshold for that and it doesn't meet that, right? Your stuff will fail. So it's on you and your architecture team, security team, performance team, whatever, to figure out what the thresholds and baselines are if you're going to be using Lighthouse in any capacity like that. But if you're just going to be doing it in Chrome or in the browser, it's just built in. It's a really, really great tool. They've come a long, long way, especially when it comes to the network testing and performance, as well as the accessibility testing and performance of that. So if you run Lighthouse, you'll see that we have, at this time, we had an accessibility score of 65. So 65 out of 100. The closer you are to the green and the closer you are to 100 is a good thing. Now there's two different schools of thought when it comes to using Lighthouse. Some people say that Lighthouse is not the end-all be-all when it comes to auditing. Some people say, oh, it's the only thing that you need. I sit right in the middle when it comes to Lighthouse. I always pair Lighthouse with another tool, always. And the reason I do that is because the rendering engine for the accessibility audit in Lighthouse, like I said, is AxeCore. AxeCore releases their piece, and then Lighthouse pulls it in. But if you're using the accessibility extension by DQ, sometimes their version of AxeCore is different than Lighthouse's version of AxeCore. It can happen. So you could run an accessibility audit in Lighthouse, and you'll get a different score than the accessibility extension that is using AxeCore with different versions. The problem with that is, how many of you have worked for an enterprise company who locks down their browsers and won't let you update? I have. So me and my team, we just went into the registry and changed a bunch of stuff around. We were able to update and then revert it back, and nobody was the wiser. That was a long, long, long time ago. But we were on an old version of Chrome, at least 10 versions behind. So, and we're building out these UI experiences, both internally and externally. And we couldn't do proper auditing because all the latest and greatest that was shipping in Chrome or in Lighthouse or the dev tools we couldn't even use, right? So you gotta keep an eye on that. So I always pair Lighthouse with something else. If I'm doing accessibility, I'll use Wave, or I'll use the other products out there, or I'll use DQ, the accessibility extension. If I'm doing a performance audit or a network audit, I'll use Web Page Test or Thousand Eyes, and then do this and do a correlation between them. So always have another tool that you're using just to do the testing and the auditing. You'd be surprised what comes up. So this is all, these things are failing, right? We have an accessibility score of 65. 65 out of 100. So we're gonna build something with Razor. So the form, we're gonna be using HTML.begin form and a form method of post. In between those curly braces, that's where all the form helpers are going to go. So we have labels and inputs, right? So we have an HTML.label. So that label is gonna be name, and it's gonna have an ID of name, or a for of name. HTML text box is gonna be name, a class of text box. So we're gonna throw a class on that with CSS. And then to set the class attribute in the anonymous object, you prefix the attribute with the @ symbol. That's required since the class is a reserved keyword in C#, and it's used for declaring a class to represent an object within that. And then you have the anonymous C# object with the curly braces. That's where you put your HTML elements. you aren't just limited to class, right? And then, let's see, am I losing it? There we go. That's the class object for the CSS, the text box, to give that text box some styles. ARIA required equals true. You don't really need this anymore. Back in the day, you could put a required attribute on there, which is HTML5 attribute. In ARIA, does everybody know what ARIA stands for? Give you a little intro about ARIA. So ARIA stands for Accessible Rich Internet Applications. If I asked you what the first rule, now this is going to sound familiar. What's the first rule of ARIA? You say use it or don't use it? Don't use it. It's okay. I'll give you a sticker. Don't use ARIA. It makes zero sense, right? Why are you going to tell us to use ARIA but then not tell us to use ARIA? So the way that you use ARIA is when you've expended all of your markup, anything that you do that you wrote is semantic, then you use ARIA. It's almost like the topping on the cake internally inside the code to make it accessible when accessibility states and properties are no longer available. So one of the ways you see using ARIA is if you're building like custom components that we don't have HTML5 for, specifically social media components. There is no such thing as a social media component in HTML. You're going to use a div for that, right? Within those social media component, you usually have icons, right? Twitter, YouTube, Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook. 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, those are just font icons. There's no HTML, there's no accessibility properties and principles with those. So you add an ARIA label to that. So like, let's say you have a Twitter icon, right? And it links out to twitter.com/CodeMash. If that accessibility property and principle isn't there, it's going to read that image and there's not going to be anything there. So you add an ARIA label to that image. So your screen reader, which, is everybody using screen readers for testing? Okay, good. We'll talk about screen readers too. It's going to read out to the person that's using the screen reader, Twitter link to access this link, Control-Shift-Option. That's on a Mac. I'm not sure how it would be done on a Windows machine. But it announces to the user that they're on a link that's clickable and it's going to Twitter. That's when you would use an ARIA label. Same thing with modals. Who's built a modal before? I would hope most of us if we're front-end devs. Well, in a modal, you have an X in the corner, right? That X is either going to be the character entity, the HTML character entity. It's going to be the letter X, or it's going to be a font icon or an image. None of that provides contextual information to a screen reader user. So you would add an ARIA label on that says close or exit. That way, you're not putting your user into a focus trap. So they're focused, if they have a modal that pops up, modal gets read by the screen reader, you might have a couple buttons in that modal, and you have an X in the corner to exit. If your user is consistently tabbing around that experience, and they don't know how to get out of that modal, now they're stuck in a focus trap. They can't focus their attention in that window back to the main window. So once they hit that X, that closing X, it'll announce to them, close modal. To interact with this, blah, 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 shift, command, option, or whatever, enter. They can click that, the modal goes away, a little bit of JavaScript, and then the focus gets shifted back to the main window. Nowadays, you don't need ARIA required, but it's just one thing to keep in mind. Don't use ARIA until you absolutely need to use ARIA. So it's going to be valid and accessible for the win. The way we're building this, it's going to work in all the browsers. It's going to benefit all of your users, and it would work with your screen readers. So to talk about screen readers, who's using a screen reader right now to test their applications and their software? Okay, what are you using? Yeah, you. Okay, what are you using? Cool. Who uses a Mac? Who uses a Windows machine? Who's a Linux nerd? Okay. We have a handful of different screen readers that you should be using to manually test. You can't just go off of automation like Lighthouse and Axe. You have to manually test. So if you are on a Mac VoiceOver is built in to your iPhone, to your iPad, to your MacBook Pro. That is how you test on a Mac. You should technically be testing in Safari. I think Safari's like the new IE still, right? That's what I've been told. I don't know. I still like using VoiceOver in Chrome and Firefox. But you'll get different things happen in different browsers, which is pretty gnarly. But Safari might do one thing, Chrome might do one thing, and then Firefox might do another, and then Edge. So that's a Mac. If you were on Windows, I've never been a fan of Narrator. Is Narrator still a thing on Windows machines? Yeah, maybe. I've heard if it is, it's greatly improved. So you could use Narrator. There's another tool called by NV Access called NVDA, which is a free tool, and it's kind of a standard. There's Windows Eyes, I believe. It's a paid product, and then JAWS is another screen reader for Windows, which is costs money as well. And then who are my Linux nerds? Just you, that's fine. That's cool, it doesn't matter. All your Linux distros, it doesn't matter. There's a tool called Orca. No, JAWS for Windows, Orca for Linux. Orca is the screen reader for, I'm pretty sure it's GNOME-based Linux distros that you would use for Linux, a Linux screen reader. It's called Orca. Always, always, always use a screen reader when you're testing. And when you're using a screen reader, don't look at the screen and read it while you're hearing it. We call that cheating. Don't do that. You know, put something over the screen, lower your monitor a little bit if you're on a laptop. If you know how to write some fancy CSS, go in your dev tools, put a blur or a filter on your web page. That way it blurs it out a little bit. Stay away from accessibility overlays as well. Those do more harm than good. Stay away from them entirely. There's a whole website out there dedicated to why overlays are bad. It's just not a good look. So, well, make sure you're testing manually. All right, and then we have our text area, HTML label, we have our for, and then we have our text area equals message. And then we have some buttons. Good old buttons. Always use a button element as well. Then we have comments. So this is how you would do comments inside Razor. It's just 2 forward slashes. So if you wanted to do that, that is a way to do comments. And then we have buttons versus links. Do not use a button as a link, and do not use a link as a button. Please do not do that. One is for one thing is for the other. What is a button used for? We don't know. How many front-end devs are in here? We don't know what a button's for? An action, submitting a form. What's a link for? Navigation, right? Different semantics all the way around. Different accessibility states and properties all the way around. Use a button for action, use a link for navigation. Marcy Sutton, a friend of mine, she used to work for DQ. She wrote a whole article about this, links versus buttons in modern web applications. It's an older article, but it still applies. So if you wanted to really kind of dig into why a button is a button, a link is a link, and why you don't switch them, definitely check out that article by Marcy. So, for the grand reveal, are we ready? Can I get a drum roll? You guys need lunch? Like, what is going on here? You need me to get you some coffee? Come on, let me get a drum roll. That's not me. Boom! It's the same thing, right? But this time it's accessible. And I'll show you. We show the audit. I love this little choo 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 choo. It's accessible. So cool. It's accessible. But we can't just take our word for it. We can't just take a team's word for it, right? We can't just take our teammates' word for it. We need to audit again. So we're going to open it up and we're going to run it in Lighthouse, do an accessibility audit. And then we get 100% across the board on that component, right? And you can validate it with another tool if you wanted to. Like I said, this might show something that the Axe Core extension might not, the Axe Dev Tools might not, right? This version of Axe in Lighthouse, well, not the Dev Tools, Axe's extension, nowadays, you can audit the whole web page, and that's the thing if you're using the extension. If you don't have a pro version, it'll just audit page by page, right? But the newer version, if you do pay for it, you can either scan the whole entire page, which out of the box the extension does, or you can do it on a component by component basis, which is really sweet. So that way, let's say you're building out a component, and if you're on a UI team, you have one component to build, and that's what you have to build, or maybe two, but they're assigned to you. Your QA person, when you hand this off, doesn't have to look at the whole entire page, right? They can just audit what you did specifically, and then you can pass on your JIRA task, whatever. Been in a lot of situations where I've built stuff when I was back as a senior UI engineer, and the QA person or whoever's testing would fail it because something else in that experience was messed up that I didn't even work on, right? This kind of alleviates that and kind of helps around the process. And the one thing too that I want to cover is that if you're building with a SPA, right? So Angular, React, Preact, Svelte, Vue, all of these applications, these front-end frameworks and libraries that are using components, they're reusable components, right? So let's say you have a 30-page website and you have one footer, right? And that footer, there's only one component in that footer, but it's getting used across the board for 30 pages. Back in the day, when I was building on the web, you had to put that footer, which we didn't have footers, we were using frames or tables. You had to put that footer on every single page. All 30 of them. I'm really dating myself. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. We used to build web pages with tables and frames. Oh, this is the good old days of the web. I miss them. GIFs and guest books and web rings and counters, under construction GIFs. So nowadays, if you were to fix that, you run an audit and you have maybe one error, right, in your accessibility audit, and it says 30 places this is messed up. It's really not messed up in 30 places. It's messed up in one place. Once you fix that and you re-upload your component, you fix it, you can run the audit, and that audit's gone, right? So that's another really cool thing about these dev tools. So I hope you had a good time in this talk. I hope I wasn't too boring. If you don't want to see the rest of my talks this week, that's fine. I'll be at the booth. But hopefully you can dig it as much as I can. Hopefully you learned a little bit about accessibility, how to build accessibility into your C#.NET stuff using Razor. And what did we learn? Well, we learned a few things. We learned accessibility and its importance. That always matters regardless. I will never jump into technology in an accessibility talk, ever. That doesn't matter. The reasoning and the importance is what matters, because that's what's going to get you first. We learned about semantic form markup, both in Razor and HTML. We learned a little bit about Razor, not everything, a little bit about HTML helpers, building a form using Razor syntax. And then we also learned about running Lighthouse audits. There's some resources here. These resources are also on the show notes, like I said. Huge shout out to Dave Pine, Scott Addy, and Ed Charbonneau, all three of them. I wrote this talk many, many moons ago. And like I said, I still did it every now and then, but if it wasn't for these three cats right here, I would have never been able to do this talk. So they were heavily inspired me to do this talk. Here's the show notes again. If you want the resources, the slide deck, the video, if you want to watch the video all over again, and then enter to win that prize. Everybody cool with that? Cool. Thank you. If you want to download this and play with it and tell me I'm full of it, go for it. That's fine. But play with it, rework it, do whatever you want, make your own stuff. And that's my time. Hopefully I'll see you later today. Hopefully I'll see you tomorrow morning. If not, come by the booth. Appreciate it.